This is dangerous.
Yeah, we don't have our backing. We just have a wall.
So for those of you, very few, who maybe today's your first time, often at the end of the meditation here on the morning, we have an open conversation, which means you can raise questions. You can be critical of us, and and we will respond.
He volunteered us to get trash. I'm not sure we all agree, but go ahead.
Yeah, we're not looking for agreement, right? An open conversation, it's good. So if you have questions about the practice, the Dharma in general, or specific things, whatever it is, generally speaking, there's no particular boundary on the conversation. So far that's worked.
Question? Oh. Thank you. Lama Michael, I have a question about relaxation. I feel that's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I was wondering why it was funny.
Me too. So I heard Alan Wallace in a video talk said that in his 40 years of giving interviews about meditation, when people come to him with an issue in their meditation, 90% of the time it's around the relaxation. And that made me start really thinking about that in my own shamatha practice. And then I started to circle around that quite a bit. Like my mind is busy and I actually try all these different techniques to relax. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about relaxation as a component of shamatha practice.
It might be more than a component. It might actually, in one sense, be shamatha. And so it just occurs to me when you said, treated it as a component. It's a great question to ask because we all, I think, have some understanding, at least out of the dictionary, of what relaxation means. So we could just pose the question and see if what you would say to that. What is relaxation? Why is it important? Tara, yeah.
My definition of relaxation in relationship to meditating would be to stop fighting with what's going on in your mind, but to just allow it to happen. Because you can't do anything else anyway. So you might as well stop beating a dead horse and just go ahead and let it be. Just turn it loose.
Well, as Buddhists, we would say it's better than beating a live horse.
Yeah, that might be a fault.
Okay, let's get serious.
I'm wondering because you gave an intro comment saying not just doing what I usually do, what we usually do, then it was like, what do I usually do? But so I'm bringing, for maybe 4 years, I'm trying to bring awareness But how is that awareness and seeing everything that arises different than doing? And so when you ask this question now, when Tim asked the question and you ask us, it's like, what's relaxation? And I again, it has to do with horses. It's sitting chill. If there's a jockey, and he could be in a race of 20 at the Kentucky Derby, but a good jockey can just sit chill, even though a ton of flesh is moving under him, surrounded by all these others, and it's just. So and the last year or so, it's been coming to understand, for me, relaxation might have to do with sitting chill. Sitting chill, and the other image that comes to mind is the eye of a hurricane. It's like going like this, but I'm still in the center, and that's when I feel relaxed, even though it's not calm or relaxing. But that's my little glimpses of experience of relax.
I want to ask Tim, you've now had a moment or two to reflect on the question. Since it was your question, it's probably nice if we make sure that maybe it's opening in a way that will be helpful for you. So maybe how is it that, now reflecting on the question, how is it that you would answer the question of what relaxation is, or what you think it's not, what the evidence of it not being relaxed is?
Thank you. Well, it seems like it's the opposite of whatever it is that I'm doing. You know, I don't actually know what it is, but I can tell you what it isn't. You know, it's not what I'm doing. Because when I sat down, I want to do something about what's happening. You know, my mind is busy and I want to do something about that. And so, having understood now that the critical nature of relaxation, what I would really like to know is in the practice of shamatha, see, that's it. I want to know what to do. It's not funny. That's what I was just going to say. What do I do about this doing?
Maybe not add more doing.
I'm Irish too. I appreciate that.
I just said maybe not add more doing, but you want to comment more on that part?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I thought to raise this morning but didn't, because I usually think about raising 10 things and raise one, was the way in which, I did mention this, the way in which our any practice that we do contains every practice. And so it's helpful when we're not sure that we're engaging in the practice to look at it in that way. Like, what am I doing here, and how is this the same as other things and different? The more that we can find the interconnectedness with what we're doing in our practice, the easier it is, I think, to relax. So, for example, I mentioned paying attention to physical sensations and mental sensations, which also includes bodily sensations, our angst. So let's take the issue of you would like to be relaxed. And most people would be able to say, at least, when I'm relaxed, I know I'm relaxed. But all the other times, I don't know what relaxation is or how to get there. I know that I left that space, and now I don't know what caused it or what brought it about. So it's time to experiment in a way with that. And one way to do that is to treat all of our practices as shamatha. So just as one example, maybe I'm having an emotional panic attack. But not so big that I can't see it, and not so big that I can't have some kind of a relationship with it. It's like not overwhelming. One of the most effective ways to deal with all of our states of mind is to just gaze at it. You just see it. You just look at it. So you can't do that if you haven't first recognized that you're not looking at it. Right? Yeah. In other words, I'm just busy and I'm not relaxed. But if you just, in that moment, you're sitting still and you just turn your awareness to the state of non-relaxation, whatever that is, anxiety about something sometimes. So then you just look at the anxiety. Our issue here that keeps us from doing that is that we think that whatever distracts us, we must apply an antidote. We must fix it. We must get out of that place so that we can relax. But in the process, we completely lose what that could possibly mean. So one of the ways that you could call it a trick, but I think it's actually really effective, is to develop the habit of using our shamatha to just place our awareness on whatever the experience is that's occurring, whatever it is. I'd like my experience to be different. So then what do? Well, the wanting it to be different has an experiential quality to it also. So if we can find that experiential quality of it, we just place our awareness there and watch it, in which case it's just a fine object of shamatha. You know? It's as good as anything, even better, because in the process we're also making discoveries about our own mind. So when we place our awareness on emptiness, that sort of relies on having already made the discoveries. But when we're just feeling lousy, that one doesn't rely on any kind of insight at all, but it's completely imbued with the potential for insight. We just have to plug in. And the plug-in is the awareness goes on the feeling, the sensation, the experience, just like you're watching it almost on a movie, so that it can have strong impact emotionally, but we just let it, like the tide, come and go. There's one.
The fact that some experience of anxiety and wishing things to be different has some stability actually makes it very useful, as opposed to being the supreme, the highest ranking of evidence that it's a problem. You can just say, no, actually this gives it the highest ranking of utility as a place to rest attention. And this is a way of kind of a little trick to take seriously what Michael just said about any experience could be the ground for profound insight. Any.
That's a relaxing thought.
Yeah.
I mean it.
Yeah.
It's funny, but I mean it.
Yeah. I remember on 1 year retreat when I was tormented, just emotionally and mentally tormented by these thoughts and the scenario that was going through my mind, and it seemed both practically unresolvable and emotionally torturing. And then I remember walking, and I was in the courtyard, and I remember this moment of putting my hand on the handrail to step up, go up some steps, and just in that moment I thought, even this experience sometime could be self-liberated. And this is like, I know, I don't want to say, well, that's the worst experience I was ever having, but I don't want to try to rank. But it was up there. But just your experience of this being, well, that's kind of it's a relaxing thought. Think, oh, even that. So there are ways to go into it, and the how is a really, having some confidence in the how is a really important piece of it.
Yeah, thank you. I see that.
So I have a practice that I do for relaxation that I started doing because I noticed that my Buddhist practice was very tense, and and I would, these conceptual notions of, working with whatever comes up. There's times when I can't do that. And so I have trained myself to relax my body just through doing relaxation exercises before I go to sleep and during the day, like noticing how I'm even listening, I'm holding my breath. And then I'm practicing just letting go, because my body is the vessel for my practice, basically. And during shamatha, like this morning, I noticed, I was doing a different practice than shamatha, but during the practice, I was tensing and getting kind of distracted, and that's okay. And I just noticed my body, and I literally just let my shoulders go, and I practice that every single day, because we're habituated to moving very quickly in this culture, and so the body is the vessel. So I think really working on relaxing every cell of the body.
I just wanted to mention, for me, I find that just sitting longer helps. Sometimes if I'm dealing with a particularly difficult thing, I just kind of sit aside like a Saturday afternoon and I just sit, sometimes for like 2-3 hours, and maybe not necessarily straight, but I might take a break or something and like kind of move the body and deal with any leg cramps or whatever. But I'll just sit until I feel better, and that really seems to help, because what I find is stuff seems to come up in waves. There's like, at least for me, there'll be a wave of whatever comes up, and then there'll be kind of a moment where it peaks like a bell curve, and then it kind of drops. It's kind of like, and then there's a calmness there, and then maybe something else comes up, and usually it's not quite as intense, although sometimes it can be, and it kind of peaks again, and then it drops off, and it just kind of keeps doing this practice of like peaking and then dropping off. And then it seems like over time, if you just kind of, at least for me, if I keep sitting through it, it's like the waves get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually you can get to the point where it's just really, really sublime. And that really helps. And when I've been finding that I have a lot of really intense stuff come up, I do that just to kind of recenter, because I'm like, okay, I just need that.
Can I move on from relaxation, or did someone over there want to say more about relaxation?
Yeah.
I just want to add one experience. There is in my case at least.
Can't hear you.
Hold it
there
up.
is, at least in my case, there is a correlation between the life under cushion and life, the so-called regular life out there, which I don't like that distinction anyway. And I figured out that when my life out there is in order, there you go with the relaxation, right? And I feel like the more I do the practice out there, the more effective it is. Out there and on the cushion. And then it starts blurring the boundary. And and you move somewhere else actually. Because this culture is exactly provoking us to not relax, right? Yeah, so. my 2 cents.
I'm not very good at relaxing at all, so probably I shouldn't say anything. But one thing I've noticed recently is that when I've been able to ask myself just what has all this frenzied physical and mental activity done for me, where has it really gotten me, that, if anything, has really helped me relax.
How did that help you relax?
Well, because you see that, especially the mental activity, all this frenzied worrying and planning and thinking and judging and deciding, and it's a bunch of baloney. I mean, it doesn't get me anywhere. It just gets me more tense and more...
Did you stop?
I can really stop when I notice it, yes, which is not all the time, but when I notice it, yes.
Then there you are.
There you are.
You wouldn't have had that opportunity if you hadn't done all that stuff that came up to that.
Yeah.
The experience of it dropping away.
Yeah.
There has to be something good about the activity which wasn't particularly good, but left you in a place where you could maybe more easily let go of it because it was too much to hold on to. It's not entirely bad. I mean, it does bring it to a point of having some recognition and maybe some insight into how to reduce it. Just a thought.
I was just beginning a meditation the other morning with this phrase, this sentence, I will be still and let the earth be still along with me. And as I got quieter, I noticed the fan. It's on the lowest setting, but there's a fan in the room. And I noticed it, and it wasn't still. That's what I thought. But so I contemplated that, and I realized, but well, it is still, because my part of the sentence is let the earth be still, and the fan is anchored to the wall, and the fan was actually still, and also, of course, the center of the fan was still as well. That would be kind of symbolically me. And just by expanding my field of awareness, I found that I could make the earth be still. So I think that's another thing that I do is expanding my field of awareness when I'm having trouble relaxing. If I expand the field of awareness, there is a level where everything is still. And so I think, holding that works.
There's a quote that goes with that I'm pretty sure comes from Zen tradition, but it says, to he whose mind is still, the whole world surrenders. To she whose mind is still, the whole world surrenders. So it's pointing back at our Mahamudra aspiration prayer. The mind is the source. So.
Can I ask you, Lama Michael, about habit? You spoke a little disparagingly about habit. And
it's because I'm a pro.
I feel like habit is a pillar of my practice. And that's probably why I go down to sit in the morning, is because that's what I do in the morning. And I wonder, what are the ups and the downs of habit? because it does seem to be one of our strategies for doing important things.
Yeah, definitely. There's never anything lost by noticing our habits. We might have an aversion reaction to seeing the habit, but the habit itself is not necessarily good or bad. So if I practice every morning, there's a certain way in which I might not be having great meditation because the habit is there, and the habit isn't just the habit of sitting down. It may be the habit of having the same thoughts, the same insights, the same whatever it is that occurs there. And so I may trick myself into thinking that every time I sit down I have the same experience. So the habit can lead us to that place. We need to have a kind of a trap door out of that state where there's that line in the Dorje Chang Tungma that we call it, where
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's the name of the prayer, the Dorje Chang Tungma, which at the very end of it, there's the meditator, who's ostensibly the orator in this, says that every thought is fresh, new, brand new. So that's not a philosophical statement. It's really meant to be said from the place of, aha, what I thought was yesterday, what I thought was the same old thing is actually fresh. It's not nothing in the world of experience, which we all live in. Nothing ever comes twice. So that's a good thing, I think, to not just to notice, but to ponder. Like, is it really true? Because we have deep habit in saying, I'm having this experience again. I met this person yesterday, here they are, I'm introduced. So we're thinking like, that's the same person? Really? Most of us, on thinking about it, would say, probably not. And thinking about it a little more, absolutely not. And when we meet somebody, we often think of ourselves as being the same person who met somebody yesterday. So it's a really good practice. This is the value of habit. The really good practice is that to notice the practices that we have that can undermine the sense of our life and our experience just being a repetitious, continuous kind of thing, that nothing new happens. But when we stop and look and see that actually nothing happens twice, we might, if we look there enough, have an experience of that, which can feel intense. The experience that nothing happens twice, ever, including the thought that nothing happens twice, ever. It's not the same, because in the interim, we have changed, things have happened. So we have different experiences. First of all, we just said, nothing happens ever. So now our mind has had that added in, which it didn't have before. So therefore, that thing can never really happen in isolation from what the interconnectedness of what went before. It's not complicated. I think that it feels complicated because we're so used to identifying this experience that I had before, this food that I ordered in the restaurant, it's the same thing I had yesterday. Of course, it's not the same thing as we had yesterday, nor is our experience of that food the same as what we had yesterday, nor is our opinion the same about the restaurant, depending upon what we ate and what happened. But in big ways, we notice that. In small ways, we tend to constantly think of ourselves as a repetition machine. Judgments are the same, opinions are the same. we could make a long list of all the samenesses until we see that actually it isn't so. It actually doesn't occur like that. But when I'm not looking, I have the experience that it's the same. I don't know if that addresses your question.
Well, it does. And to me, part of the problem is we're creatures of language.
Yeah.
We live through our language.
That's
and,
right.
you know, eggplant is eggplant.
Yeah.
And meditation is meditation. And Bill is Bill. And so we're fighting that. Unless we're going to stop living through language, which we're not going to.
I don't think we have to stop flitting through language, but fighting that might be an issue.
No relaxation there.
Your original question, you said, well, kind of what was the problem with habit? And yes, well, and we do speak of it as a problem. And habit is, in some sense, in an abstract, neutral. However, if we just look at the number of habits that we have that are not so helpful versus the number that are helpful, it's kind of a democracy in terms of labeling habit as generally not so helpful. But habit in and of itself is not a problem because, as you say, you can cultivate the habits to do all kinds of good things that are beneficial. So as long as we're kind of aware of the potential for using our capacity for habit in that way, it's good. The part about being able to actually then step beyond kind of a coarse level of relationship with our experience to a more subtle relationship with our experience, that's where the things that Michael was talking about it really kicks in there. And so it's not so much that we have to fight with language as we just have to look very carefully at what we're doing in the process of applying labels and applying a sense of, I am going to meditate again. So when we really sit down inside a session of meditation, you really have to let go of that level of abstraction about things to really meet experience.
I want to stay on this thing about habit as an illustration that I hope is helpful. So some of you have heard me talk about my habit. I'm driving a car, and if I get anxious or frightened, then I found myself swearing at the person who caused this, like that, and whether I said it out loud or not, my mind, habit of mind. So the first piece was seeing it, and then I knew I didn't want to do that. So I started, so that first piece of seeing it is really important because we don't see habits, especially if they're very, very long, old ones from even our family of origin. It's hard to see. But I saw it, and then for me, one trick is at the very lowest level, see it, and then you put in a different habit. So I put in this other habit, and the one day that it was very funny, my new habit was, may you be well, may you be happy, no matter whatever happened. So then this guy comes right up to my bumper and zips around me honking, and I'm right back in my old habit, swearing aloud this time in the car by myself, but swearing, and then said, and may you be well, and may you be happy. And I was really delighted that I could flip it. But the thing I want to say that I think we're looking at here is then that habit flattens out. Now I'm at the level where may you be well, may you be happy. I'm thinking I've said that over and over and over. It's the same, may you be well, may you be happy. Well, it's deadened. So now I have to get a new one. So that's the trick of habit. Even we create a new beneficial habit, we have a bigger habit of this is boring, I need something new. And we do. So we have to freshen. We have to freshen it. It is true, every moment's brand new. That's astonishing to hear. I've never said this word before. Wow. I can't even grab that. But that'll get old in a while too, that thought. Do you see what I'm saying? So we have to make the effort to freshen the good habits, to see it because of that persistent overall habit.
So I had an experience this last week, it was a couple weeks ago, in preparation for a trip. I came down here because the microphones are down here. In preparation for a trip, I don't like swimming, and I'm going on a trip where I'm going to need to swim, and I'm going to need to snorkel, or I won't be able to see all the life in the water. I'm going to the Galapagos Islands, so it's totally cool. And this thing that I'm so averse to, I have to do something about it, or I'm going to waste the trip. So, I'm afraid of the water, frankly. So I found this person, and I went to a swimming and a snorkeling lesson. And when my partner Martha outed me as a Buddhist to the teacher, so then she was full of ideas. She's been studying Buddhism by books and online, right, as many of us did for years before we actually managed to find a place. And she had decided that it was all about breathing. And you have to do a lot with your breathing when you're swimming and snorkeling, right? So she was off on telling me about breathing. And actually, it was really, really helpful. But she also pointed out to me habits that I have when I'm frightened in the water, physical habits that make my swimming not good and make me be tense in the water, and really interfered with snorkeling, because if you put your head up when you're scared, it puts the tip of the snorkel in the water, right? So really counterproductive. So what we ended up with was in a whole conversation about habits, because she was giving me ways to change physical habits that I've had in the water for my whole adult life. And she had no idea that Buddhism had anything to do with habits, right? She thought it was all about how you breathe and focusing on your breath and so on. So we had this great conversation about habits, and for me it was really a spotlight on how much the practical application, like Alice was saying a while ago, off the cushion kind of application of this making a difference in my life, was becoming aware of habits and replacing them with new habits that are more productive. Like, I think I totally get that. I wish my habit of practicing every morning were better established than it is, and I'm working on it. But there are just a million little ways, like he who shall not be named. I have to work on the habit of how I respond to what happens so many times a day. And, there are just a million places. So I think the issue of habit is subtle and completely loaded and wonderful in terms of being Buddhist. The most productive place for me in my actual, how is this changing my life on the relative plane, which is pretty much where I am. So, anyway.
Someone there, right next to Linda.
I would like to say a word in defense of habit. One thing that we forget is that, what's being used here as habit covers a whole range of behavior, some of which is productive and helpful, like habits of care for yourself, for those around you. Those are good habits. The other thing, and I was thinking about doing your practice in the morning, actually, is that not to think of it as a habit at all. It's part of the framework of your life that holds your practice in place. And those frameworks are very important. And I don't I don't even think of them as habits. This is how I begin. So this is how I begin. And yes, it is a habit. You could view it that way. It would certainly fall under the definition, but it's far more than that and far more important to maintain some of those frameworks that help us shape our life and our practice.
I can do it without the microphone.
It's for the streamers, Tim. The
Okay.
streamers can't hear
Okay.
without it.
So, Phil, thanks to Kathleen back there, I have a fascination with acronyms. And one of the acronyms we use in the Mind Training Study Group is HIT, HIT. And it stands for Habit Interruption Technology. Because that's what one of my experiences of the mind training practices does. It interrupts and interferes with your habits. And that's one of its technological advances.
That's a hit, Tim.
So you can come second and fourth Thursdays here, 7 o'clock, and learn that technology.
This virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lama Michael. It's still cleaning day, so at a minimum, if you can pick up your zafus and your zabutons and shake them outside. And then see Linda